Okay, I've got another floating nymph pattern for you, and it occurred to me that I showed you the sort of original floating nymph pattern previously that's just got little hackle legs sticking out the sides for very flat water, and somebody said, how about the one with the parachute hackle? So I figure I'll show you how to do that one as well. And it's just occurred to me that I just put that dubbing away because I'm super efficient these days. There we go. So I'll get that back out. So I'm going to tie this on an XC110 Umpqua X Series hook. This is a 16, and I'm using some kind of gold-colored Veevus 14 on. Obviously, match whatever color thread you need to match your bug. But I'm going to start this thread at about 75%, and I'm going to wrap back to just past the hook point. And at this point, I'm going to put a little pinch of dubbing, and on this one I'm going to use this Hare's Mask dubbing from Nature's Spirit. It's a little buggy, and again, you got to keep in mind that this is a floating nymph, so that little bit of shagginess from this dubbing is not going to be a downside. So I just took the tiniest little bit of dubbing and put it on the thread there, and I'm going to use this bare thread to work back to the apex of the bend, and when I get there, I'm going to build just a little ball of dubbing. So just a tiny little ball. And you can see I've still got even a little bit of dubbing left on my thread. Not a big deal for what we're about to do. So then for the tail, I'm going to use, this is a barred ginger feather. And you could use blue dun here also. This is just sitting on my desk handy. And I'm going to take, I'm shooting for about 6. We'll see how well I do. 6 of these fibers, and I want to tie these in just in front of that nub of thread, like so. And you can see there's a little curve to those, which is not atypical at all. And what I want to do is kind of split these half and half to each side of this nub. And what I tend to do is I'll grab the near side with my fingers and then use my fingernail to kind of hold the far side separated. And I can pull these, very dramatically to the sides and get right up to the end of that nub and use my thread torque to separate them. Or more like what has happened here is I get a little bit more of a fantail. If you've got one or two in the middle that aren't cooperating, like that guy right there. What guy right there? Now we've got a nice spread tail. So now I'm going to take a piece of extra fine copper wire, and I'll tie this in and wrap back over it to the bend as well. And I'm going to dub the abdomen now. So what I want to do for the abdomen is sort of overdub, a little too far, what will seem like too far forward. We ultimately want the wing that we're going to put on here, the little dubbing ball wing, to be on top of the front edge of this abdomen. So you need a little more dubbing than you might think at first. And I'm going to use that bare thread and use that to get back to the bend and start my dubbing right at the bend of the hook. And then I'll work forward. And a pretty slight taper. This is a skinny little nymph. I actually maybe have a little bit too much dubbing here. Might spread that out just a bit. And you can see this is showing on the screen. You can see I can just sort of spread that strand out and make it thinner. And I know I'm not going to need this bottom end. So I can pull out some of that extra and tighten what's left down. Just build a bit of a taper on that front end. Now this is a natural dubbing, so it's fairly shaggy. This has got Hare's Mask, Rabbit Fur, and Antron in it. So it's kind of a nice, buggy nymph dubbing. And in the case of what we're trying to do here, kind of shuck-like. So now I'm going to pick up my copper wire, and I'm going to spiral wrap this through the body just to create some segmentation. And I'll tie that off actually on the front of the abdomen. I can break that fine wire out. You can see how close I am to the hook eye here. That's crowded on purpose because I want to overlap back to about 80-20, where you would put the wings on a dry fly, is where I'm going to put my wing and hackle in. So now I'm going to take a hackle feather, and I want a somewhat oversized feather. On this hook you can see this is 1.5 anyway. I'm going to take this feather and strip the butt end. Now that I go to strip this, I'll show you something. See this is sort of an odd feather. See the fibers on the top are fairly long and the fibers on the bottom are fairly short. It's just got a weird spot in it. Sometimes you'll get a feather like that that is inconsistent from side to side. And a lot of times you can kind of just work up the feather and get past that. But this is not one of those cases, so I'm going to find another feather. So just bear with me while I dig through this cape and find us a nice size 15 feather. Something like that. So now I'll prep this feather. There you go, a little more like it. Fiber length the same on both sides. And those feathers that are long on one side and short on the other are not unusable. They're just not as clean. Honestly, I could have used that feather just fine. I feel like when I do these videos, I want everything to be perfect. So, but had you all not been watching, I'd have probably just carried right on with that. Now, here I should talk while I do this. When I tie this feather in, I'm going to tie it in upside down, so the concave inside of the feather up. This is ultimately going to be wrapped like a parachute, but not in what has become our conventional parachute manner. So I'm not going to post anything, and I'm not going to be able to turn that feather around. So I want it to be up right now, so inside up. Now I'm going to take some gray superfine dubbing. Like so. And I'm going to dub this onto the thread in a short, fat little noodle. And I kind of want it crossways to the thread. I'll bring this up here once I get it tightened down. A little extra wax never hurts to tighten that end down. You can kind of see what I've got there if I fold it in half anyway. Short, fat little strand. I've got an inch or so of dubbing. I want to use the bare thread, and really just the bare thread, to get up here right at the front edge of the abdomen. And at this point, I'm going to take my bobbin, and if I get this set just right in the screen, you can see I've now tilted my bobbin down, so my thread is coming up here into the bobbin tube and back down again. And I'm going to reel the thread in, and I'm going to use the end of the bobbin tube, you'll see it come on the screen, to compress that dubbing down into a neat little knot there on top. Then I'm going to pinch that knot and bring the thread around the hook a couple times to anchor that off. You might have a little slack. You can see I kind of push that back. So I've got my little nub of dubbing up on top there. Now to tighten that all up, I'm going to take some more of that same brown dubbing in a pretty thin application here because we've got a lot of our bulk already built. I'm going to use this to dub from just behind my index point up to the base of that wing bud and even overlap right up against the front edge. And I'll take that last turn and end up back up at my hook eye again. So you can see our little ball there. And I've got some guard hairs in there that are just sort of distracting, so I'm going to trim those out just so you can follow the path of what I'm about to do. Alright, so now I'm going to pick up my hackle feather, and I'm going to wrap this counterclockwise, tying left-handed. And I'm going to go between the dubbing ball and the hook. And you're just kind of sneaking 2, 3, 4 turns. I'm going to say 3 turns there. In. I'm going to pull this feather down on my near side. I'm going to close my fingers underneath the hackle so that I can just expose the tip. And then I'll tie that off with a pinch wrap just behind the eye. 2 or 3 good tight turns in there. Then I can come in and trim my tip out. and set up my whip finisher. Kind of work from the bottom. I can sweep that back out of the way if I need to. Looks like I do need to. Build my little thread head there. Nick that thread out. And then if you kind of push that ball forward a little bit, you can flatten your hackle out. You got a little weird one sticking out over here. Looking pretty good on this side. I think that fiber is actually not even attached to the fly, but just floating around there. I got one weird little loop of a guard hair there. Just clean up his overall profile. But there you can get a pretty good view of what we've got going on. Parachute hackle. What is this? I think that's a piece of fur sticking out there. I don't know what that is. I think I got it. But that little exploded dubbing ball on top, or compressed dubbing ball for the exploded wings, with the parachute hackle, that'll give you a lot better flotation if you're fishing this in a riffle or a little bit rougher water. That widespread tail is for the same reason, just to give you some more surface area. You can see you're just kind of packing those few turns of parachute hackle in between the dubbing ball and the dubbed abdomen / thorax. So that is the parachute floating nymph. Kind of an old pattern, and not a lot of guys know how to tie that one, so that one's a little tricky. Superfine dubbing works really well for this. Wool dubbings also work really well for this. They've got a little bit more body to them. The thing I like about the Superfine dubbing is I can grease just that. It really holds floating very well. So I can kind of pack a little floating in there and make this fly float even a little bit better. You can see with that small nub, it's setting pretty low. You can see that this fly might be a little hard to see. But just fish closer to you. That's the whole gist of seeing your fly. And since we're on that subject, if you're ever out fishing, particularly a small fly, and you can see it sometimes but not see it other times, I've probably said this before, that's probably more a function of your cast not going where you're looking than it is your eyesight. If you can see it at 25 feet once, you can see it at 25 feet all the time. You're just not finding it. So that's the difference there. So to see your fly better, practice your casting. There's my little tip for the day. I'm Charlie Craven. That's the Parachute Floating Nymph. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. We'll be back with some more. You guys take care.